Hey everybody, I'm Patrick, and this is Rocky Mountain Style. If this is your first time here, then welcome, and if not, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the Grantstone diesel boots. These are in navy Chromexcel leather, and they are now over 2 years old. Now, as time goes on, this sort of content is going to become more prevalent on the channel as the boots that I have begin to age. I'm going to be doing videos showing how they age and just talk about my thoughts after having them for a long period of time. So I did get these 2 years ago, Christmas of 2021, from my lovely wife, and they've been a really fantastic boot. This was my first Grantstone product, and I got it in kind of an out there leather, which at the time I was really happy that I did, and now 2 years later I'm even more happy that I did. So stick around. We'll talk about sizing, we'll talk about fit, we'll talk about how they've broken in, we'll do some close-ups of the leather, and we'll just talk about Grantstone and the diesel in general. So thanks a lot. Before we get into the looks of the boots and how they've changed, let's talk about sizing. So when I got these, the only other boots, real boots I'd really owned were a pair of Thursday Majors and a pair of Thursday Captains. I had both of those in 10D. Following that guidance and some of the things I'd seen both on the Grantstone website and online, I thought that my good size for the Leo Last would be a 10.5D. Problem was, when I was getting these boots, there were no 10.5Ds in stock. So talking to Grantstone, they said, well, if you want, you can drop down a numerical half size and go up one letter in width. So that's what I did. I went from a perceived 10.5D to a 10E to try to get the right size. And when I got them in, I still wasn't really well versed on how snug a boot should feel, not really understanding how thicker Chromexcel was going to break in. So I thought 10E was perfect. At the time, it was a little bit snug, but really thinking back, it was probably more because the leather was just a little bit thicker than I was used to. It was a little stiffer. So as the boots have broken in, turns out 10E is just a little bit too wide. There's a little bit too much room up in the toe box. And thankfully, the heel's fine. And so when they're laced, and if I'm wearing thicker socks, I can't really wear these with thin boot socks or thin work socks. I have to wear thicker ones. Everything's fine. They're plenty comfortable, and I really don't have any complaints. But my true size is really 10D, not 10E. So if I wear these with thin socks, there's just a lot of movement up here in the front of the toe box, and maybe just a little bit of extra room up front. Let that be a lesson to you, I guess. For me personally, my Brannock size is 10.5D. So my right size for a Leo Last, which I've confirmed on future diesels, is actually the 10D. But I have these in 10E. Okay, so that's really it for sizing. How did they break in? They did take a little while to break in, but again, my memory may just be jaded because they were, really the second or third pair of real boots that I had. So I wasn't really knowing what to expect. But there was no real pain breaking them in. They were just a little bit stiff. And as they have broken in, I found the Leo Last to be just absolutely wonderful. It cups your heel the right way. There's plenty of, I guess, shape up here near the collar so that once you get the laces cinched in, you have a nice tight fit. The instep isn't too narrow, at least for me, so they're easy to get on and off, even if you don't make the laces really wide. And I just think they have a really nice silhouette. And I think ultimately that's why Grantstone's done so well with this boot. So, all right, let's move on and look at some of the conditioning, some of the creasing, and some of the wear. Okay, several things to note here. Of course, as we start looking close up at the boot, you can see there are several, we'll call them deep creases. And for me, this is just how this particular type of Chromexcel has worn in. So if we look here at the creasing on the toe box, you see both of the boots have a very pronounced sort of double crease there, going across like that. I think that's fairly expected for boots that have been worn a lot. And I will mention, I have conditioned these a good amount, probably more than I needed. I did use shoe trees when I first got them. but these lines still showed up. So I have not been putting shoe trees in them since. I haven't really seen the point, to be completely honest with you. So these have been conditioned. They did not dry out. So there's nothing like that going on. On both of the boots, there are, I guess you can see right here on the outside, you can see some of the dye wearing away and revealing the brown leather underneath. So kind of like a T-core effect, which I think is pretty cool. So that's kind of what I'm excited to see moving forward, is more of that pop through and have these become more of a, a green T-core rather than just a deep forest green. And I guess that's a good segue into talking about the color, right? So navy Chromexcel, and if you've been around the boot world or looked at these Grant Stones before, you know that everyone says they vary in color, and it's hard to tell on a camera. But in most natural lights and in most artificial lights, for me, these look just like a forest green. I personally can't see any blue in them. So your mileage may vary, and maybe on this camera, in this particular lighting, maybe you'll see some blue in them. But they're supposed to be, kind of a turquoise, and to me, they're just not. They're green, which is fine. I like the way they look. I don't have any particular issues with them whatsoever. So really, no complaints. These leather laces, they're still fine structurally. They have, gotten quite a bit more ragged, as you expect. With laces like that, I've generally used these leather or rawhide laces, not quite sure what to call them. They did come with some sort of black dressier laces, wax cotton, that I also sometimes use. You can see the interior has gotten, it's aged, gotten a little bit darker, which I think looks really cool. It was definitely a lighter kip lining. Now it's a slightly darker kip lining, but it looks cool. All right, so that was the right boot. Let's look a little bit closer at the left boot. So I think that's just some dust, but you can see, yeah, it's starting to get a little bit of cracking there. And I guess you can't really see the brown showing through yet on this side, but I can't wait to see that show through. So here's something where I must have scraped the edge of the boot against something metallic. So you can see a big scrape on the welt there. And that's just kind of how boots go, right? You can see some of the creasing that's come in. Yeah, all in all, though, everything's held up really well, and there hasn't been anything out of the ordinary, as far as I know. So here's the inside of this boot, lots of creasing there. Actually, once you get enough creasing, I actually think it's kind of cool looking. It gives, I don't know, almost like an animalistic look in a way. But I like it. Close up there. All right, let's look at the bottoms. This is also a good time to mention, that's kind of gross. Sorry about that. I don't wear any boots on a daily basis. I have way too many, and I like variety. So, of course, these haven't been worn daily. These have been worn nowhere close to, 700 and sometimes, having them 2 years. But you can see, there's a little bit of wear there on the outside of the sole, which is kind of where my boots wear anyways. Yeah, very expected. But yeah, still have quite a ways to go before I would entertain any sort of resole on these. At first I thought, as soon as you started seeing some of this stitching, get sort of worn like that was a problem, but it's not the way that, Goodyear welting is done and the way the stitching is done. There's still, it's still being held fast in there to a different set of stitch, so no real issues there. Yeah, just a little bit worn off the heels on the back, as you expect. Yeah, it's a really comfortable outsole. The day and night inspired studded rubber design. Yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So all in all, Diesel at 2 years after not having, really heavy daily wear. I think they're in great shape. I think they continue to look better with age, and I look forward to, another 2 years with them. If you have any questions, please let me know below, and I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.